parser, unless or until I'm finishing that module, please do not absent my class, because it may happen sometimes that some of the portion which I'm teaching today, that is not completed within 1 hour, and that may be continued to the next class. So in that case, suppose you are absent today and you have joined tomorrow, so you will not understand that from which point I am solving. Okay, because that is related to the previous class. So it is my request to all of you that do not do any absent when I am in the module called parser, because parser is the largest portion. Largest means largest table you have ever seen. Okay, one problem sum can take one whole period of time to explain. Okay, and that comes in your exam paper. So if you are lucky enough that again online exam goes on, then it's okay. Otherwise, in your question paper, you will have to solve the question from that particular portion. And that portion is lengthy, but it is easy to score. Okay. So that is why I'm telling, try not to be absent. Tell your friends also. Today the attendance is 42 out of 63. So tell your friends also that do not try to do any absent in my class. Okay. This is a theory class. No labs are there. I think all of you know. But if you wish to do any project further based on the knowledge you will gather from this subject on NLP or any this sort of suppose where the language construct and the compiler background knowledge requires, then you can go ahead with it if you have a good knowledge of the compiler design. Before starting the class, let me ask you one question that can anyone tell me that what is compiler from your basic knowledge? Can anyone tell me what is compiler? Is there anyone who knows this?
Compiler is converted to a high level language into low level language.
Good. So it is that means what Nicholas said is correct. It's a software module, or we can tell it as a software or translator software, which is actually converting a high level language to a low level language. So sometimes it may happen, Mithilesh. I just wanted to correct you in a single portion of your answer, that it is not always that you are converting from your high level to low level. Okay. It may happen that you are converting from your high level to assembly level language as well. So it is a kind of translator. Okay. Achha. My next question is, what is interpreter? Can anyone tell me that? Interpreter. What is interpreter?
Interpreter converts high-level language to assembly language.
High level language to assembly language, not low level.
So, yeah.
Program that directly execute instruction written in a programming or a scripting language without requiring them.
So that means it is also converting from one type of language to another type, means from a source language to destination language, right? You want to say that, right?
Hello.
Poetry, Sumon.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Can anyone tell that what is difference between these two type of translators? There's two things you already heard, right? One Mithilesh said about what is compiler, and one other two guys said about interpreter. But the conclusion is that
Ma'am, interpreter converts it line by line, and whereas compiler converts it as a whole.
Compiler
Yes,
converts it as a whole. Okay, what do you think that which one will take more time to execute?
Ma'am, interpreter.
Why? Why so? Why Why do you think that it will take more time?
Because interpreter
Because
stops
me,
the program when an error is found, but the compiler gives.
Sorry?
Interpreter stops the program when an error is found, and compiler uh, gives every error in each line
Mhm.
or something like that.
Compiler gives error in every line. So,
Just it executes a program in a one go, and it gives error and whatever the missing part in the program.
good, good. That is the correct answer. It completes or it scans the whole program at one go. So that means, suppose you have written 100 lines of program and you are executing the same program, or sorry, you are actually in a compilation phase and you are compiling the same program using your interpreter or using your compiler. So what compiler will do, at its stage, it will scan the all 100 lines, and whichever line it will find that there are some erroneous language constructs, that means syntactically you have written something wrong or semantically you have written something wrong. So it will point out those lines for you at one go, okay, and will display the error results along with the line numbers for you as a report, right? But what happens in case of interpreter? Suppose you have written 100 lines, 100 lines in your program, and in first line only, suppose you have written something wrong, some erroneous statement you have written, which is syntactically not according to the language construct. So in that case, it will halt because it has to generate a report for that first line. So again, you have corrected that first line, and then again you have executed your interpreter. Again, suppose at fourth line you have written something wrong, and it will halt and it will generate a report of that error, what kind of error it is. So that means what I mean to say, to execute your 100 lines of code, it is halting when it is getting some error. So each line it is getting an error, it is halting and will generate a error report for you. Okay, so definitely then it is going to take time because each time it is halting and you are again running your interpreter to see what is the next line or next errorless line is there or not. So obviously your interpreter is going to take more time with compared with the compiler. So that means you all have this basic knowledge. I'm happy to hear that. Okay. So in this subject, what we will learn that for compiling a source language to a destination language, your destination language can be a low-level language, can be assembly-level language. We don't bother about that, but we are using this translator to translate our source language to destination language. So what are the phases it is going to, follow step by step how this compilation will be done, and at the end your product will come out as a assembly level language or your low level language. So it depends on the type of compiler you are using. So what are the phases you are going to follow? So these phases will be a single chapter in your compiler design subject. So it looks like that we are just clicking on the compilation button and it is getting as an output report of your errors. Or if there is no any error, then your compilation is successful and you are going ahead for running the code or executing the code. But actually at the back end, there are so many phases which are involved to compile a source language to get the destination language. So that we are going to learn in this particular subject. Okay. Now you may ask me question that, ma'am, then where this automata portion is going to come, which I am talking about. Okay. So this compiler is a software that you are developing, right? So how your compiler you are going to build? Suppose you are being given a task to create a compiler. You are being given a task to create a compiler. So for that, you will have to first understand that what are the basic phases a compiler needs when it takes an input, the source language, and when it generates as an output that destination language. So what are the intermediary steps it is going to follow? That we will have to understand very carefully. Okay. Now, whatever compiler suppose you are developing, it will follow definitely a particular type of language. Suppose, for example, I'm talking about C compiler. So C compiler, within that C compiler, all the rules or the constructs or the semantics, syntaxes which are followed in the C languages, that are being embedded. So that when you give an input, a C file, you using an editor, when you write a C program, it generates a object file for you. So what is object file? Is there any idea about this object file? Anyone? Any idea about object file? Anyone is having idea? Object file?
Ma'am,
किसी को
ma'am, it contains object code.
object code? Okay. So how do you generate it? Anyone is having any idea? This is just a basic class today, huh? I will teach you all of this. Okay. But just to know that how far you know these basic things. Achha, let me ask some other way so that you can understand. Uh, when you write some program, then what is the extension of that program? Do you know? When you write some program, what is the extension it is having? Any editor, suppose you are using for writing that program, what is the extension of that file?
It depends on programming language, which programming language we are using. If you are using C, then .C, C++, then CPP, Python, then .py.
Achha. So that means you are telling that when you are writing some programming languages program, so it depends on that particular compiler you are using, and the extension will depend on that particular compiler, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, tell you one thing. This .c or .java or .cpp, when you are writing any C program or Java program or C++ program, basically these extension not comes when you write a program on the editor. So that means when you any editor you are using, you have not saved it yet. Just you are typing. You have not saved it using any file name. At that time, its extension is always a text file. That means .txt always. Okay. If you are using a Turbo C, you are writing and have not saved yet, its extension is by default .txt till you have not saved it. When you have saved it, then either you can save it using .c or using .cpp file, and accordingly your C compiler understands that where is my source file, and accordingly it tries to scan the lines written within it and tries to compile it. Okay. Achha. There are certain phases when you are writing a program and when you are executing your program. Between these two statement, there are many phases. What are the phases? When you are writing any program on the editor, basically you are dealing with a text file. Okay. And in that file, suppose you have written some hash includes, right? The preprocessors you have written or hash defined, anything you have written for preprocessor. So that phase comes before your compilation phase. So that means when you have saved your file using .c extension or .cpp extension, but you have not compiled that file, so that means your pre-processing is also pending. When your compiler comes into play and it tries to compile the code or compile the lines written in your .c file or .cpp file, it first tries to resolve the preprocessors written within that file. So that means whatever hash includes or whatever hash defines or macro, whatever you have written on top of your C program, that should get executed first. So not executed, basically those are expanded. So that phase is called pre-processing phase. So when your file goes through this pre-processing phase, then the extension changes to .pri from .txt to .pri. Okay, then comes your compiler. Now when the pre-processing is done, every macro which needs to be expanded or everything which needs to be replaced, replaced means, or printf, scanf, whatever library files where the definition part it needs to be reached, those are clear to the compiler. Then compiler starts compiling each of your lines written in your source code one by one. If it is a compiler, then it scans every lines at one go. And if it is an interpreter, then it tries to resolve one line at a time. Okay. Then your compiler generates an object file, which is your, then you have saved the file and your compiler has gone through it and you have not written any sentences which are wrong within it, then it generates an object file. Now, you may ask me question, ma'am, then how this after compilation, we are going to run that code. If it is not an exe, it is an object file, then how am I going to run that code? Because we know that without the extension exe, any file has not become an executable, right? Then how can we run it? So let me clear the difference between this object file and your exe file, that in your project, you may have more than one object file present. So that means suppose in your project, you have written 3 source file. So after compilation, this 3 source file is going to generate 3 different object file. But it may happen that these 3 files are connected to each other. So that means overall output, when you are trying to get, these 3 objects files needs to be resolved. So then what will happen? What this next phase will come? Next phase will come the linking phase. So that means after compilation, the phase comes as a linking phase, where this linking of these different object files needs to be done. So why this linking phase is necessary? Not only to convert from your object file to exe file, but if there are some external link library which needs to be resolved after compilation or needs to be resolved at the time of your execution at runtime, then those dynamic link library should be connected. Okay, so that is why suppose you have 3 objects files. So these 3 objects files will be connected to each other one after another. And if there is any DLL, that means dynamic link library, that will get resolved at that time and it will create one LNK file, which is which linker will generate. Linker is also one module. Okay, so this linker is going to generate one single LNK file. Extension is LNK. Now this linker is going to load that program to your RAM. So this loading is then done by your loader. Now when that program is ready in your RAM, then your executions takes place. So there your exe is generated. That means one exe which is having all the codes of binary. That means it is made of only zeros and one strings. There are no more any high level constructs, only low level constructs, zeros and one strings. So that is called your pure exe file and which is ready to be executed and it gets executed on your RAM. Okay, understood? Then your LNK file gets generated to a exe file and that exe file you basically execute. So these are some of the phases when you write your program and when you execute your program or you get your output. So between your writing and your output you are generating, between these two phases, there are these intermediate phases. That means pre-processing, then compiling, then linking, loading, and then you are generating your output. Okay, so these are these modules which I have talked just right now. this loader, linker, interpreter. All of these modules are called cousins of compiler. Cousins of compiler, because from generating the output, when you are generating that output, these modules also helps. Not only compiler only generates the object file for you. In case of Java, it generates a bytecode. So bytecode is not a binary, okay? Because it has some intermediate instruction embedded within it, which is only related to the Java runtime environment. So bytecode is not a binary code. That you will learn in your Java subject. Teacher will taught you that what is bytecode. So whatever. So between your writing your program and generating your output, these phases comes into play. And these modules are responsible for taking one phase code to another phase. So that means you have a editor where you are writing, then you have a preprocessor who is helping you to pre-process the expansion, hash includes, hash define, macros, everything. Then you are saving your file using .c extension or .java or C++ if it is, then .cpp, any extension. Then you are generating object code which is having an extension of .obj. Then comes your linker which links your external references. Then linker throws that to loader to load that into your RAM, and in RAM when it gets loaded, you execute your particular program and you generate your output. Am I clear up to this point? If anybody is having any question, you can ask me. Any question, because this is just an introductory class. No one is having question? Repeat the steps. Okay. First is you're writing your program. So that means you are using any editor you are writing, right? Or not? At that time, you are actually, when you have not saved it. So that means you are having extension of .txt. Okay. Then inside your program, suppose you have written some preprocessor, then functions and other language constructs you have written. So when you are trying to save it, so either you will save it using .c or .py or .java, .cpp, any extension you will be using when you are saving your file, and you will go ahead with your compilation phase. So when your compilation phase is going to start, so compiler will first try to resolve the part which belongs to the preprocessor. Suppose you have written some hash include or some macro which needs to be expanded. So those pre-processing will be resolved first before your compiler starts its working. Otherwise, your compiler is not able to compile the whole code because it is not getting some of the answers, right? If you are using some printf, scanf functions, or you have used some macro which needs to be expanded, but it has not yet expanded, so it will not come to know about its meaning. So these needs to be resolved first. So at that time, when your pre-processings are done, so your file extension becomes .pri. Okay. Now, when this pre-processing is over, now your expanded code means where your pre-processings are expanded. So that code is ready with your compiler. Now compiler tries to compile that code. So it scans the whole code at one go, and one by one it is scanning. It is going through all the phases which we will learn in this subject. And at the last, it is going to generate an object file if your code is error free. So that means every line you have, if you have written correctly, then it is going to generate an object file for you. Now, suppose in your project, you have more than one object files. So that means more than one source files were also there. So that is why this has concluded to create more than one objects files. So, and these objects files are linked to one another. And using these all objects files you are having, you are going to generate your output, suppose. So in that case, what will happen? Your linker will come to play. So what this linker will do, it will scan, it will get the result of object file 1 and it will put in one place. Then again it is going to take the object file output from output file 2, and then it is going to keep it in the next line of that particular linking file. So that means how many number of objects file you are having, you are going to generate a single linking file where all the objects files result, along with if you are having any dynamic link library which needs to be resolved at the runtime. Runtime means it is after compilation, okay? That needs to be resolved at runtime. Those DLL or dynamic link library portion should get resolved at that time. And your linker is going to generate a single LNK file for you, okay? And that linking file or LNK file is now going to give it to the loader for loading it to your RAM. Now, when the loader loads it in your RAM, so now it becomes an exe, which is actually a binary code. That means it only consists of zeros and ones. It's a string of zeros and ones. No high level construct is present there. Only low level. That means it is a string of zeros and ones. So now it is exe. It is ready to be executed, and you can generate your output from that. Understood? Any other student is having any question, you can ask. Anyone is having any question? Am I going too fast? If so, then please tell me.
No, madam, no.
Okay. So these are some basic things that we will have to understand, because when in chapters we will learn each of these phases of your compilation. There I may tell something which is related to these modules, which I told about the cousins of compiler. I told you that linker, loader. Then so I will also talk about cross compiler. What is cross compiler? Then this preprocessor, which are involved when you are writing your code and when you are generating your exe or generating your output. So between these two, these cousins of compilers are also helping to get the output. Okay. Now a cross compiler, which I just told you, cross compiler, that cross, the term cross is actually telling that the compiler is meant for something, or rather I should tell you that it is originated in some machine, and it is meant for some other machine. What do I mean by that? It is originated in one machine as meant for another machine. So basically here the cross compiler means आपने जो कंपाइलर सपोज आपने क्रिएट किया है, वो एक पर्टिकुलर आर्किटेक्चर में आपने सपोज उसको क्रिएट किया है, ओरिजिनेट किया है. तो डेफिनेटली आपने जब ये कंपाइलर क्रिएट किया है, सो दैट मीन्स योर इंटेंशन इज टू क्रिएट अ ट्रांसलेटर, नथिंग मोर देन दैट. ओके. बट जब आपने उसको जनरेट किया है जहां पे, या फिर जहां से ये कंपाइलर ओरिजिनेटेड हुआ है, उसका जो प्लेटफॉर्म है या फिर उस सिस्टम का जो आर्किटेक्चर है, दैट इज डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द टारगेट मशीन वेयर दिस कंपाइलर शुड बी एग्जीक्यूटेड. मतलब ये कंपाइलर कहीं पे जाके आप इंस्टॉल करोगे और वहां के जो फाइल्स है या फिर वहां के जो प्रोग्राम्स है, वो उस कंपाइलर के थ्रू कंपाइलेशन होगा. तो ओरिजिनेटर मशीन और जो टारगेट मशीन जहां पे ये इंस्टॉल होगा और जहां पे ये प्रोग्राम को कंपाइल करेगा, these two machine architectures are totally different. Okay, so that is why it is called cross compiler. Normally ये cross compiler आप और ज्यादा अच्छे से समझ पाओगे कि मान लो कि आपने अगर विंडोज मशीन पे अगर आप कोई सी प्रोग्राम का कंपाइलेशन फाइल जनरेट करते हो, मतलब ऑब्जेक्ट फाइल जनरेट करते हो, क्या आप वो सेम फाइल को अगर पेन ड्राइव में लेके अगर आप कोई लिनक्स मशीन में चाहो तो क्या आप उसे रन करवा सकते हो? हैव एनीवन ट्राइड दैट? मैंने क्वेश्चन क्या किया कि आपने सपोज एक प्रोग्राम लिखा है, ठीक है, आपने एक विंडोज मशीन में वो प्रोग्राम को लिखा है। लिखने के बाद आपने सेव किया, सेव करने के बाद आपने उसको कंपाइल किया। ओके, तो जैसे ही आपने कंपाइल किया तो एज पर माय नॉलेज आपने एक ऑब्जेक्ट फाइल जनरेट किया। ओके, नाउ व्हाट यू हैव डन, you took that object file in your pen drive and now you are inserting your pen drive into another system which is having a Linux OS, and then you are trying to run that object file in that particular Linux machine. Can you do that? Yes or no? एक विंडोज मशीन से जनरेटेड एक ऑब्जेक्ट फाइल को क्या मैं लिनक्स मशीन पे रन करवा सकती हूँ? कैन आई गेट अ
नो
आउटपुट?
हम अगर हम लोग प्रोग्राम को कॉपी करेंगे तो फिर वो लिनक्स में काम कर जाएगा, लेकिन ऑब्जेक्ट फाइल पे तो नहीं करना चाहिए क्योंकि वो
यस,
विंडोज
यस,
के लिए बिल्ट हुआ था।
बिल्कुल करेक्ट। सो दैट मीन्स ये कंपाइलर भले ही ये सी का प्रोग्राम हो, लेकिन जैसे ही आपने कोई एक पर्टिकुलर सिस्टम के आर्किटेक्ट वाइज या फिर प्लेटफॉर्म वाइज आपने ऑब्जेक्ट फाइल जनरेट किया है, इसका मतलब उसमें जो सेट ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शंस फॉलो हुए हैं बैकग्राउंड पे, वो उस मशीन के आर्किटेक्चर पे डिपेंडेंट है, प्लेटफॉर्म पे डिपेंडेंट है, राइट? इसके अकॉर्डिंगली उसके मशीन इंस्ट्रक्शन चेंज है, मशीन इंस्ट्रक्शन कोड चेंज है, तो उसके अकॉर्डिंगली उसने ऑब्जेक्ट फाइल जनरेट कर दिया। अब अगर उस ऑब्जेक्ट फाइल को आप पेन ड्राइव में लेके अगर आप लिनक्स मशीन पे अगर उसको रन करवाने की कोशिश करोगे, तो वहां से वो बाइनरी जनरेट करने में उसे प्रॉब्लम होगी, क्योंकि उसको तो पता ही नहीं है कि कौन से मशीन से ये ओरिजिनेटेड हुआ है, राइट? तो हियर द क्रॉस कंपाइलर कम्स। मतलब मैंने क्या किया कि जहां पे उसे ओरिजिनेट किया है उस पर्टिकुलर ऑब्जेक्ट कोड को, वहां पे मैंने ओरिजिनेट करके मैंने टारगेट मशीन बदल दिया, मतलब जहां पे वो एग्जीक्यूट करके एक्चुअल आउटपुट देने वाला, तो मैंने अगर बदल दिया है तो मेरा नॉर्मल केस में वो काम नहीं करना चाहिए कि मैंने अगर ऑब्जेक्ट फाइल विंडोज मशीन से लिया और उस ऑब्जेक्ट फाइल को मैंने डाल दिया लिनक्स मशीन पे और मैंने कहा कि लिनक्स मशीन पे वो रन करे, सो इट इज नॉट पॉसिबल बिकॉज दैट इज प्लेटफॉर्म डिपेंडेंट। और प्लेटफॉर्म डिपेंडेंट होने की वजह से उसके मशीन इंस्ट्रक्शन कोड्स एंड एवरीथिंग उसके बैकग्राउंड पे वो चेंजेस है जो कि लिनक्स मशीन पे सूट नहीं करता है। बट इफ आई एम क्रिएटिंग अ क्रॉस कंपाइलर, in that case it will run. Okay, so in that case मैं पहले से ऐसे ही प्रिपरेशन लेके चल रही हूँ कि जहां पे मेरा कोड ओरिजिनेट होगा, मतलब ऑब्जेक्ट कोड ही जहां पे ओरिजिनेट होगा वहां, और जहां पे वो एक्चुअल रन करने वाला है, जो टारगेट मशीन पे वो रन होने वाला है, both architecture are not same, both machine instructions are not same. I'm preparing my compiler in that fashion only, so that across the platforms it can run smoothly. In that case, whatever compiler I'm designing, that will come into the category of cross compiler. Am I clear? Am I clear or not? Or should I tell it again?
Clear.
So cross compiler is another thing. Let me tell you about the syllabus. Just wait 1 second. To tell you about the textbooks, if you want to have it, so Ahu Ulman Shetty is the book, which is your textbook. But I will follow some other books also, because in those books, I'll be getting some more examples for you to solve in the classroom. So I'll be following some other books also, like Adesh Kumar Sharma and another book. Dr. G. Sudha Sadasivam. So this is also a good book where many questions are there, many problem sums are there, which actually requires for your practice purpose. Just wait for a second. Is my screen visible?
No.
This is your syllabus, basically.
Yes, ma'am. Now it's visible.
So this is your syllabus. You can see the first unit is your first module is introduction to compiling, where I will be giving some of the briefing about the introductory part. Introductory part means when you go through different phases of the compiler. So in compiler also we consider that some of the phases will fall under the category of front end and some phases will fall under the category of back end. So which all are called front end, which all are called back end, and why so? Huh? And what are the cousins of compiler, which just I have talked. So those things will come in your first module. Okay, just a basic part. From the second module, actually, the phases will start. So basically, this lexical analysis phase is the first phase of your compiler. So you can see this module is a whole chapter. So here you can see the DFA, NFA portion you can see, right? So these are your automata portion. This I want you to revise. Okay. So up to context free grammar, you just revise. So that means what are NFA, means non-finite automata, what are DFA, how to convert from NFA to DFA, then if there are epsilon loops, then how to remove those, then how this grammar are categorized, what are context free, context sensitive. Context free and context sensitive is not so necessary because the compiler only understands context free. So at least context free grammar, why it is type 2 grammar, and the problem sums related to that. Then some of the portion from your RE, that means regular expressions, how to convert from regular expressions to finite automata or finite automata to regular expression back. So these portion I want you to do a revision from your previous semester's notebooks. Then when this first phase lexical analysis is over, the second phase will come the next chapter, which is syntax analysis. In the syntax analysis phase, I was talking about this parsing, right? Just now I talked. In parsing phase, I will be talking about parsers. Please do not absent in these lectures because these parsers tables are so long that it takes one whole period to draw that parsing table from boards one end to another end. Okay, and it requires second period to explain that what I have written from one end to another end. Okay, so that is why I'm telling when I will start this module parser, please do not be absent till I do not end it. Okay, then your next phase comes, which is semantic analysis, where this syntax related translation will come. Next is type checking, where your intermediate code generation phase will come. Next is your runtime environment. Runtime environment means some of the changes you need to do before proceeding for your binaries or proceeding for your object codes. So you have to do some kind of optimization and everything. So your runtime environments strategies you have to follow. And in intermediate code generation, whatever intermediate codes you are going to generate, what are the forms of that? This is my next phase. Then comes your optimization techniques, which you are going to follow. and then ultimately your target code generation will be done. So that means the object model which you are going to generate as an output of your compiler design, that is going to happen. Okay, so these single units are nothing but your phases. Okay, as I told you. So the single units you will have to learn in detail, and in each units you will have to solve some problem sums, as I told you. So please be attentive in the class. Just switch on the class and sleeping is not going to help you, at least in this subject. Okay, because the suppose the problem I will solve in the class, I may not give the same question in your unit test. Okay, so in that case, the tricks or the things which I will discuss in the class, that is going to help you. Though the rules I will say that will be same for all the questions, but you may face some difficulty if you do not practice it. Okay, so that is why it is my request, because the question will come in a mixture, though it is looking like a theory thing, but actually it is not. Okay, so you will have to create some tables, you will have to follow some rules to put those entries in that table, and that rule you will have to understand, and you will have to know that when to apply what technique. So it requires a lot of computation. Okay. So that is why be attentive in the class. That is my request to all of you. Don't tell at last कि मैम मुझे समझ में नहीं आया. हाँ, because समझ में तभी आएगा जब आप attentively सुनोगे. So that is why in my first class I have just give you a brief idea about the subject and why we should learn it. If you have any question, then you can ask me up to these questions which I have discussed. If anyone is having any question regarding the subject or regarding the content which I have discussed today. No question? No one is having? If no one is having any question, then shall I wind up the class for today?
Madam.
Oh. Okay, then let me take your attendance. Today I have downloaded the attendance from here, but next time onwards I will call out your names and you will respond me. Okay, then you will get the attendance in the TC sign directly. Okay. Is it clear to all of you what I told about attendance?
Okay, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay,
madam.
ma'am.
Okay, then I'm winding up the class, and from next class, means from tomorrow, I'm going to start the syllabus accordingly I have shown you just now. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.